Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to tonight's journey into peaceful slumber. I'm James Flora, and tonight I'll be guiding you through a wondrous tale called Whispers of the Moonlit Valley. This story has been carefully crafted to help you drift into the most peaceful sleep. Before we begin, I invite you to find a comfortable position, perhaps lying on your back or your side, whatever feels most natural to your body tonight. Allow your head to sink gently into your pillow. Feel the weight of your body being supported completely. There's nothing you need to do now except listen and breathe. Take a deep breath and and slowly exhale. With each breath, feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort. The outside world with all its demands can wait until tomorrow. Right now, this moment is just for you, just for rest out as I begin our story. Allow my voice to be your companion as you drift towards sleep. There's no need to follow every word or remember any details. If your mind wanders or if you fall asleep before the end, that's perfectly alright. That's exactly what this story is designed for. Now, let's begin our journey into the Moonlit Valley. A place where dreams and reality gently merge into one. Part 1. The Invitation. 25 minutes, in a small cottage at the edge of a forgotten forest, lived a keeper of dreams named Alara. Her home sat nestled between ancient oak trees whose branches seemed to cradle the little house in a protective embrace. Soft candlelight flickered through windows, framed with climbing moonflowers that only bloomed in the evening's gentle glow. Alara was neither young nor old, but existed in that timeless state of someone who has collected just enough wisdom to be at peace with the world. Her hair, the color of polished silver, fell in gentle waves down her back, and her eyes held the soft blue-gray of twilight every evening. As the sun made its slow descent beyond the distant mountains, Alara would sit by her window and watch the transformation of the world. The busy sounds of day would gradually soften into the quiet symphony of night. Crickets would begin their gentle chorus, owls would call softly from the trees, and the whisper of wind through leaves would create nature's perfect lullaby. This evening was special, though Alara couldn't precisely say why. Perhaps it was the unusual clarity of the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. Perhaps it was the particularly sweet scent of the moonflowers as they unfurled their delicate petals. Or perhaps it was simply that feeling one sometimes gets, that quiet knowing that something wonderful is about to happen. Alara prepared for her evening ritual with careful attention. She brewed a pot of chamomile tea with just a touch of honey harvested from her own beehives. The honey was infused with lavender and dreams. At least that's what the villagers said when they came to her for remedies for sleepless nights. As she poured the golden liquid into her favorite mug, a handcrafted piece with swirls of blue and purple glazing, a soft knock sounded at her door. This was unusual, as few visitors came to her cottage after sunset. Those who did were often troubled souls seeking relief from nightmares or insomnia. When she opened the door, Alara found not a person but a small, sealed envelope resting on her doorstep. It was made of parchment so fine it appeared to glow faintly in the moonlight. Her name was written across the front in flowing silver script that shimmered when she tilted it slightly. She brought the envelope inside and settled into her cushioned reading chair by the hearth. The fire cast a warm, gentle light as she carefully broke the wax seal. An impression of a crescent moon surrounded by tiny stars. Inside was a single card with the same elegant silver writing. The Moonlit Valley awaits your presence this evening. Follow the path that appears with the rising of the full moon. Bring only yourself and an open heart. The dreams of many depend upon your journey. Alara read the message twice more, letting the words settle into her mind. She knew of the Moonlit Valley, of course, but only as a legend, a place spoken of in whispers and old tales. It was said to exist between the waking world and the realm of dreams. visible only under certain moons to certain people. She moved to her window and looked up at the sky. The moon was indeed full tonight, a perfect, luminous circle casting the world in gentle silver light. And there, where she was certain no path had existed before, was a narrow trail leading from her garden gate into the forest, marked by small flowers that glowed with an inner blue light. Alara didn't hesitate. As keeper of dreams, she understood. Invitations like these were rare and significant. She wrapped herself in a shawl of soft wool the color of midnight, slipped her feet into comfortable walking shoes, and took only a small lantern. Though she suspected she wouldn't need its light dot as she stepped outside, the night air embraced her with its cool touch. The path of glowing flowers seemed to pulse gently, as if beckoning her forward. With one last look at her cottage, she set out, following the luminous trail into the forest. The forest at night was a different world from the one most people knew. Where others might have felt fear in the shadows between trees, Alara felt only wonder. The darkness here wasn't empty but full of the quiet breathing of sleeping animals, the subtle movements of night-blooming plants, and the gentle presence of ancient trees standing watch over it all. The path led her deeper than she had ever ventured before. The trees grew taller and more spread apart, their massive trunks like pillars in a natural cathedral. Moonlight filtered through their canopy, creating patterns on the forest floor that shifted and changed as if alive. After walking for what might have been minutes or hours, time felt different here. Alara noticed the forest thinning ahead. The path of glowing flowers widened, leading toward what appeared to be an opening between two particularly massive oak trees. Their branches intertwined overhead, forming a natural archway draped with hanging moss that glittered with tiny points of light like fallen stars dot as she approached the archway. A soft breeze carried the scent of unfamiliar flowers and fresh water. She paused for just a moment, taking a deep breath to center herself before stepping through. The view that greeted her took away what little breath remained in her lungs. Before her stretched a vast valley bathed in moonlight so bright it rivaled twilight. The valley floor was covered in tall grass that swayed in patterns, as if moved by music only it could hear. Scattered throughout were pools of water so still they perfectly reflected the star-filled sky above, creating the illusion of walking among the heavens. Flowering trees, unlike any Alara had seen before, grew in gentle clusters, their blossoms luminous with soft blue and silver light. Fireflies, or what appeared to be fireflies, but glowed in various pastel colors, drifted lazily through the air in spiraling patterns. And there, at the center of the valley, stood a circular structure of white stone that seemed to absorb and reflect moonlight in equal measure. It wasn't large or imposing, but something about it commanded attention, as if it were the heart around which this entire magical place pulsed dot. As Alara took her first steps into the valley, she noticed her body felt lighter, as if gravity held less sway here. Each step seemed to carry her just a bit farther than it should, giving her movements a dreamlike quality. She made her way toward the stone structure, watching in fascination as the grass parted before her steps and closed again behind her, leaving no trail. The night air here felt charged with possibility, not the frantic energy of excitement, but the gentle potentiality of dreams just beginning to form dot as she drew closer to the stone structure. She could see it was a circular pavilion with a domed roof supported by slender columns. The stone wasn't pure white as she'd first thought, but held within it veins of silver and pale blue that curved and flowed. Like frozen streams, dot standing at the entrance to the pavilion was a figure Alara couldn't quite focus on. It seemed to shift between forms, now appearing as an elderly man with a long silver beard, now as a young woman with flowers woven into her dark hair, now as a child with eyes far too wise for their years. Welcome, Dreamkeeper, the figure said, its voice neither male nor female, but somehow both and neither. We've been waiting for you. Who are you? Alara asked, finding her voice sounded different here, more resonant, as if each word carried echoes of other words she might have spoken. The figure smiled, and in that smile, Alara saw kindness beyond measure. I am the guardian of the Moonlit Valley. I have many names, but you may call me Loon. I tend to this place where dreams are, born before they find their way to the sleeping minds of your world. Alara looked around with new understanding. These are dreams all around us, Loon nodded, in their earliest form. Watch closely. Alara focused on the movement in the valley, what she had taken for unusual patterns in the grass and strange. Flights of the firefly-like lights now appeared differently. She could see forms taking shape, ephemeral, constantly shifting, but undeniably there. A school of fish swimming through air instead of water. A castle built of clouds slowly assembling its towers. A forest growing and changing through seasons. In the span of minutes. It's beautiful, she whispered. Yes, agreed Loon. But we face a problem, one that only a dreamkeeper from the waking world can help us solve. Will you come inside? There are others waiting to meet you. Alara followed Loon into the pavilion, where the interior proved far larger than the outside suggested possible. The domed ceiling arched high overhead, its surface moving with swirls of constellations that didn't match any night sky Alara had ever seen. The floor beneath her feet was smooth stone that felt somehow soft, yielding slightly with each step. Like the most gentle cushioned dot in the center of the pavilion was a circular pool of water, so still it appeared solid. Around this pool sat 7 figures on cushions of woven moonlight. Like Loon, these figures shifted in appearance, though each maintained certain distinctive features that made them recognizable despite the changes. The Council of Dreams, Loon said quietly to Alara before addressing the gathered figures. I have brought the Dreamkeeper as requested. One of the figures who maintained the constant feature of butterfly wings that changed color with each. Shift of form spoke in a voice like wind through chimes. Thank you for answering our call, Dreamkeeper. I am Morphia, weaver of pleasant dreams. Another figure, always wreathed in gentle shadows, inclined what might have been ahead. I am Somnus, guardian of deep rest. Each introduced themselves. In turn, Lucida, keeper of vivid dreams. Rivera, collector of memories. Quietus, master of peaceful transitions. Fantasia, crafter of imaginations. And Nocturna, protector of the night mind. Please sit with us, Morphia said, gesturing to an empty cushion that appeared beside her dot. As Alara took her seat, she noticed the water in the central pool beginning to move, forming images that shifted and changed. A child sleeping peacefully, an elderly woman tossing restlessly, a young man smiling in his sleep. These are the dreamers of your world, explained Rivera, her form momentarily settling into that of a woman with books for hair, each tiny page fluttering as if being read by invisible fingers. Those currently in the embrace of sleep. Why? Have you called me here? Alara asked, though she was beginning to sense the answer as she observed more closely. Many of the dreamers appeared troubled, their sleep far from peaceful. Somnus sighed, a sound like distant thunder. Something is wrong in the realm of dreams. For the past several moon cycles, we have noticed dreams having difficulty reaching their intended dreamers, and those that do arrive often become twisted, turning gentle fantasies into disturbing nightmares. We believe something or someone is intercepting the dreams as they travel from our valley to your world, added Fantasia, who currently appeared as a young artist with paintbrushes where fingers should be, each dripping colors that evaporated before touching the ground. At first, we thought it might be the natural fluctuation that occurs with seasonal changes, Lucida continued, her eyes constantly changing color but always remaining bright and piercing. But the disruption has only grown worse. Now we fear that if it continues, people in your world will begin to suffer greatly from the lack of proper dreams. Alara understood the gravity of this immediately. As a keeper of dreams in her village, she had seen what happened when people went too long without proper dreams. Irritability gave way to confusion, then to a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of physical rest could cure, and finally to a kind of walking sleep where the lines between reality and fantasy blurred dangerously. What can I do to help? She asked without hesitation. Quietus, who had thus far remained silent, spoke in a voice so soft Alara had to lean forward to hear. Despite his whispered tone, his words carried the weight of mountains. You must follow the path of dreams, track them from their birth here in our valley to their destination in the minds of sleepers. Somewhere along that path lies the disruption. How will I see this path? Dreams aren't visible in my world except to those who are experiencing them. Nocturna reached into the folds of her constantly shifting garment and withdrew a small object that gleamed in the pavilion's gentle light. As she held it out to Alara, it became clear it was a pendant, a teardrop-shaped crystal suspended on a chain of interlinked silver stars. This is a dream lens, Nocturna explained. Wear it and you will see what is normally hidden. The paths dreams travel, their composition, and any barriers they encounter will become visible to you. Alara accepted the pendant, surprised by how warm it felt against her palm. When she slipped the chain over her head, the crystal rested just above her heart and emitted a soft pulse of light that seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat. Almost immediately, the world around her shifted subtly. The air was now laced with ribbons of light in countless colors, flowing from the surrounding valley through the domed ceiling of the pavilion and out toward the waking world. These are dream paths, Morphia explained, seeing Alara's wonder. Each connects a forming dream to its destined dreamer. Looking more closely at the ribbons, Alara could see images flowing along them like scenes painted on moving water, fragments of stories, emotions given visual form, memories reshaped into new experiences. We believe the disruption is happening somewhere between our realm and yours, said Loon, who had remained standing behind the seated council. As dreams pass through the veil that separates worlds, something is catching them, altering them, or preventing them from reaching their destination entirely. The journey will not be without challenges, warned Somnus, his shadowy form growing slightly darker. The space between realms is neither here nor there, a place of in-betweens where normal rules of existence grow thin and unreliable. You'll need to be careful, Rivera added gently. Your physical form remains tied to your world, but your consciousness will travel the dream paths with more freedom than any of us can. This makes you uniquely qualified to find the disruption, but also vulnerable in ways we cannot fully predict. Quietus raised what appeared to be a hand, though it looked more like the gentle fall of evening shadows. Before you decide whether to accept this task, there is something else you should know. Time passes differently on the dream paths. What might feel like hours to you could be mere minutes in the waking world, or what seems a brief moment might stretch across days. If I don't do this, Alara asked, what happens? The council members exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them before Fantasia answered. Without intervention, the disruption will continue to grow. Eventually, all dreams may be blocked or corrupted. A world without proper dreams quickly becomes a world without proper rest. Without creative inspiration, without the necessary processing of emotions and experiences, minds would slowly unravel, continued Lucida, her bright eyes dimming momentarily. First would come chronic exhaustion, then hallucinations as the mind desperately tries to create its own dream states while awake. Finally, a kind of madness that no healer in your world could remedy. Alara touched the dream lens pendant resting against her chest. Its gentle pulsing had already synchronized perfectly with her heartbeat, as if it had always been a part of her. She looked around at the council members, at Loon standing watchfully nearby, at the flowing ribbons of dreams overhead. "I'll do it," she said simply. "Tell me what I need to know to begin." Relief visibly passed through the council, manifesting as ripples of light that momentarily brightened the pavilion. Loon stepped forward. "You will meet guides for different portions of your journey. No single being can accompany you the entire way, as the path crosses boundaries that limit where each of us can travel." Morpheus stood, her butterfly wings expanding to their full impressive span. "I will guide you through the valley and to the first threshold. Dreams in their infancy are my domain, and I can show you how to recognize healthy dreams from troubled ones. I will meet you at the threshold between formation and journey," said Rivora. "The places where dreams incorporate memories require careful navigation." Each council member explained the section of the journey they would help with, creating in Alara's mind a map of sorts. The flowing creation fields with Morphea, the memory archives with Rivera, the deep rest caverns with Somnus, the imagination forests with Fantasia, the vivid plateaus with Lucida, the transition corridors with Quietus, and finally the night mind sanctuaries with Nocturna. "And I," said Loon, "will be your constant connection back to this council chamber. Should you become lost or confused, focus on the dream lens and call my name. I will hear you and provide what guidance I can, though there may be places where even my voice cannot reach you." Alara nodded, taking a deep breath as she prepared herself for the journey ahead. "When do we begin?" "Now," said Morphea, her wings creating a gentle breeze as she moved toward the pavilion entrance. "The night is deepest now in your world, which means more dreamers await. It's the perfect time to observe the full cycle." As Alara rose to follow, Somnus spoke once more. "Remember, Dreamkeeper, trust what you feel as much as what you see. Dreams speak the language of emotion more fluently than the language of logic." With those words of advice echoing in her mind, Alara followed Morphea out of the pavilion and back into the moonlit valley, now seeing it with new eyes through the power of the dream lens. The valley was even more extraordinary than before. What had appeared as merely beautiful meadows and flowing pools now revealed their true nature, vast networks of dream creation. Each blade of grass, each ripple in water, each floating mode of light played a role in the complex process of dream formation. "Dreams begin as feelings," Morphea explained as they walked through fields of tall grass that sparkled with dew-like droplets of light. "An echo of emotion experienced during waking hours that seeks resolution or exploration during rest." She gestured to a nearby pool where the liquid surface was disturbed by gentle ripples originating from its center. As each ripple reached the shore, it released a tiny orb of light that floated upward. "Watch closely," Morphea instructed. Alara focused on one particular orb. Through the dream lens, she could see it wasn't simply light but contained swirling colors representing emotions, the deep blue of sadness, the vibrant yellow of joy, the smoldering red of anger, all intermingling like watercolors in constant motion. The orb drifted toward a stand of the unusual trees Alara had noticed earlier. As it passed among their luminous blossoms, it began to grow and change. Images formed within it, vague at first, then increasingly detailed. "The trees provide context," Morphea explained. "They translate pure emotion into scenarios drawn from the collective experiences of all dreamers who have ever lived. This gives structure to what would otherwise be formless feeling." Alara watched in fascination as the dream continued to develop. The swirling emotions settled into a scene, a person standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over an endless ocean. The figure's posture conveyed both longing and hesitation. This dream carries a blend of desire for adventure and fear of the unknown, Morpheus said softly. Now it needs to find the dreamer who requires this particular exploration tonight. The dream, now a translucent sphere containing its little world, floated higher until it joined the colorful ribbons of light flowing overhead. It hesitated briefly, quivering as if making a decision, then merged with a ribbon of deep purple that meandered toward the edge of the valley. How does it know which dreamer to choose? Alara asked. Morpheus' form shifted slightly, her wings taking on the same deep purple as the ribbon that had accepted the dream. Dreams and dreamers call to each other like magnets drawn to their perfect match. Each dreamer broadcasts their needs during sleep, sometimes loudly, sometimes as the barest whisper, and dreams respond to the call that most closely matches their essence. They continued walking through the valley, with Morphea pointing out the various stages of dream formation. Some dreams formed quickly, racing from emotion to fully realized scenario in moments. Others developed slowly, gathering complexity as they drifted through different regions of the valley. Not all dreams are created the same way, Morphea explained as they approached a grove of trees with bark that gleamed like polished silver. Some are born from necessity, the mind processing daily events and emotions. Others come from deeper places, the soul working through lifelong patterns or preparing for significant changes. As they entered the grove, Alara noticed these trees bore no blossoms. Instead, their branches were hung with what looked like tiny wind chimes that produced no audible sound, yet clearly vibrated with energy she could feel against her skin. These are the memory trees, Morphea said. They help create the dreams that integrate past experiences with current emotions, allowing the dreamer to make new connections and find resolutions to old wounds. Beneath one particular large tree, a dream was forming unlike the others Alara had seen. Rather than developing from a small orb, this one was taking shape from streams of light that poured down from the silent chimes, pooling on the ground. In a swirling mass of images and sensations, peering closer through her dream lens, Alara could see fragments of what appeared to be someone's childhood memories, a birthday celebration, a tearful goodbye, a moment of triumph, a bitter disappointment, all intertwining with more recent experiences. The dreamer's mind was clearly trying to make sense of patterns repeating throughout their life. "This is where I must leave you," Morphea said, her butterfly wings folding close to her shifting form. "We've reached the boundary of my domain. Rivera will meet you here to guide you through the next stage of your journey." Even as Morphea spoke, another figure emerged from between the silver trees. Where Morphea's presence brought a sense of gentle possibility, Rivera carried an aura of depth and permanence. The books that formed her hair had multiplied since Alara had seen her in the council chamber, their tiny pages fluttering more actively. "Welcome to the archives of experience," Rivera said, her voice carrying echoes of countless other voices. "This is where dreams connect to the dreamer's personal history." Alara thanked Morphea, who dissolved into a cluster of butterflies that scattered among the trees, each one carrying a tiny spark of light to emerging dreams. "Come," said Rivera, extending a hand that seemed composed of pressed flower petals from countless gardens. "We have much to see, and already I sense the disruption growing stronger ahead." Rivera led Alara deeper into the grove of silver trees, which gradually transformed into what appeared to be an endless library. The trees themselves became towering bookshelves, their branches forming elaborate networks of walkways between collections. What had been wind chimes hanging from branches were now suspended lamps, each containing a different colored light that illuminated specific sections of shelving. "Every dreamer has their own collection here," Rivera explained as they walked down a main aisle, with countless smaller paths branching off in all directions. Their memories are stored, categorized, and preserved. Dreams draw upon these archives to create experiences that resonate personally with each individual. Alara noticed that some collections were vast and meticulously organized, while others appeared smaller or in various states of disarray. Some glowed with vibrant energy, while others seemed faded or partially obscured by what looked like thin veils. Why are they so different? She asked. Rivera paused beside a particularly well-maintained collection, where books arranged themselves into new configurations even as they watched. Some minds are naturally more organized or place greater importance on memory. Others prefer to let experiences flow more loosely, and some... She gestured toward a distant section where the shelves were partially hidden in shadow. Some deliberately obscure painful memories, though they are never truly erased. As they continued through the archives, Alara began to notice something concerning. In certain sections, books lay scattered on the floor as if knocked from their shelves. In others, entire collections seemed to be covered in a fine dark mist that moved with subtle purpose rather than drifting randomly. This is not normal, Rivera confirmed, following Alara's gaze. These are signs of the disruption we spoke of. Something is interfering with how memories connect to dreams. They approached one of the affected areas. A collection belonging to what appeared to be a young woman was partially enshrouded in the strange mist. Dream ribbons attempting to access. The memories were being diverted or thinned as they passed through the darkness. Rivera reached toward the mist, but stopped just short of touching it. It resists my influence. This is something foreign to our realm. Alara, driven by a keeper's instinct to protect dreams, reached out through the dream lens. To her surprise, the pendant glowed brighter, and the crystal emitted a beam of light that temporarily cleared a path through the mist. Through this opening, she caught glimpses of the young woman's memories, recent experiences of achievement, and joy that were being prevented from incorporating into her dreams. The dream lens responds to you, Rivera observed. This confirms you are the right one for this journey. Before Alara could respond, a tremor passed through the archives. Books rattled on their shelves, and the pathways between collections swayed alarmingly. We must move more quickly, Rivera urged. That tremor suggests the disruption is growing stronger. We need to follow the dream paths to see where they're being most severely affected. They hastened through the archives, Rivera leading them, unerringly through the labyrinth of collections. As they traveled, Alara noticed the dream ribbons overhead becoming more agitated, some fraying at their edges while others pulsed with uneven light. They eventually reached what appeared to be the edge of the archives, where the bookshelves gave way to a vast open space. Here, dream ribbons from throughout the archives converged like rivers flowing into a sea. The ribbons twisted and braided together, forming wider channels that flowed toward a distant horizon where reality itself seemed to bend. This is the boundary between memory and deep rest, Rivera explained. Beyond this point, dreams carry their collected memories into the realms where consciousness fully surrenders to sleep. Alara could see that the disruption was more pronounced here. The dark mist they had observed in isolated pockets throughout. The archives was gathering along the boundary, forming what looked distressingly like a barrier. Dream ribbons that encountered it either thinned dramatically or diverted their course, some even doubling back into the archives. This should not be possible, Rivera said, her voice troubled. Nothing should be able to form barriers between the dream realms. They are meant to flow seamlessly into one another. Alara studied the barrier through her dream lens. The pendant vibrated against her chest, its light pulsing more rapidly than before. Through its power, she could see that the mist wasn't uniform, but composed of countless tiny fragments that reminded her of puzzle pieces? No, more like shards of something broken. These looked like fragments of dreams, she said slowly, understanding dawning. But they single quotes read dot, wrong somehow, inverted or corrupted. Rivera nodded grimly. You see clearly. These appear to be dreams that have been twisted from their intended purpose and repurposed as obstacles. Only something with intimate knowledge of how dreams function could accomplish this. A low sound like distant thunder rolled across the boundary. The barrier of corrupted dream fragments pulsed and grew slightly thicker. Somnus awaits you on the other side, Rivera said. As guardian of deep rest, he may have insights I lack, but you'll need to pass through this barrier to reach him. How? Alara asked, eyeing the menacing darkness with understandable concern. Rivera considered for a moment. The dream lens has already shown it responds to your intention. As a keeper of dreams from the waking world, you possess a unique connection to both realms. Focus your intention through the lens. Create a passage not by opposing the barrier, but by reminding it of its true nature. Alara took a deep breath and closed her eyes, cupping the dream lens pendant in both hands. She focused her thoughts on what she knew of dreams, their purpose to heal, to process, to prepare, to delight. She thought of the dreamers she had, helped in her village, the peace that came to troubled faces when a healing dream finally reached them. The pendant grew warm in her hands, its pulsing synchronizing perfectly with her heartbeat. When she opened her eyes, a beam of pure silvery light was extending from the crystal toward the barrier. Where it touched the corrupted fragments, they didn't vanish, but rather trembled and realigned, briefly returning to their original purpose, before drifting back into corruption. But that brief realignment was enough. A narrow tunnel formed through the barrier, dream fragments holding themselves apart just long enough to create a passage. Quickly, Rivera urged. This opening won't last long. You're not coming? Alara asked, suddenly apprehensive about proceeding alone. Rivera shook her head, her book hair rustling with the motion. I cannot leave the archives of experience. My essence is bound to memory, but Somnus will find you on the other side. Trust the dream lens to guide you. With a grateful nod to her guide, Alara stepped into the tunnel. Inside, the passage felt surprisingly stable, despite being formed from writhing fragments of corrupted dreams. Through her dream lens, she could catch glimpses of what these fragments had once been. Peaceful scenes of flying, exploring mysterious landscapes, reunions with loved ones, all now twisted into unrecognizable shapes. The tunnel seemed longer from the inside than it had appeared from outside, stretching on until Alara began to wonder if it had an end at all. Just as doubt began to creep into her mind, she saw a faint blue light ahead. Moving toward it, she emerged from the tunnel into a landscape entirely different from the archives she had left behind. Here, everything was cast in deep blues and purples, with occasional highlights of silver. The ground beneath her feet had the yielding softness of a perfect mattress, while the air itself seemed designed to invite slow, deep breathing. Overhead, instead of dream ribbons, vast waves of gentle light flowed like the aurora borealis, carrying dreams deeper into the sleep state. Rivera had called this the realm of deep rest, and Alara could immediately understand why. Every element here seemed designed to embrace and cradle consciousness as it surrendered fully to sleep. In the distance, what looked like islands floated in a sea of midnight blue mist, each one glowing with its own unique constellation of lights. Those are the deep sleep sanctuaries, said a voice like gentle thunder from behind her. Turning, Alara found Somnus, his form even more cloaked in shadows than before. Here in his own realm, he appeared more substantial, yet somehow also more mysterious, the shadows that composed his form containing tiny points of light like distant stars. Each sanctuary hosts dreamers in their deepest sleep state, he continued. This is where the most profound healing occurs. where the mind restructures itself after processing the day's experiences. Alara noticed that the barrier she had passed through looked different from this side. Rather than a wall of corrupted fragments, it appeared as a troubling discoloration along the boundary, like an infection spreading slowly but persistently. The disruption affects each realm differently, Somnus explained, noting her observation. In the archives, it manifests as confusion and blockage. Here, it appears as contamination of the deep rest state. What exactly is happening to the dreamers when their dreams are disrupted? Alara asked. Somnus gestured toward one of the nearby floating sanctuaries. As they approached, Alara could see it contained what appeared to be a transparent dome, within which a representation of a sleeping person floated in peaceful suspension. Dream waves passed through the dome, temporarily illuminating the sleeper with gentle light before continuing on their journey. Normally, dreamers in deep rest receive continuous waves of restorative dream energy, Somnus explained. This balances their emotional state, consolidates memories, and repairs physical energy. When disrupted, he directed her attention to another sanctuary where the dome was partially obscured by patches of the same dark mist they had observed at the barrier. Dream waves approaching this dome became distorted as they passed through the contamination, reaching the sleeper with diminished intensity or altered quality. Through her dream lens, Alara could see the effects on the dreamer, subtle distress in their expression, rapid eye movements, tension in their form. This dreamer will wake feeling unrested, Somnus said, his voice carrying genuine concern. They might remember fragments of unsettling dreams, or nothing at all. Their mind will carry a heaviness that should have been lifted during sleep. And if this continues night after night? Alara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. First comes fatigue that no amount of rest seems to cure, Somnus replied. Then irritability, difficulty concentrating, emotional instability. Eventually, the boundaries between waking and dreaming begin to blur. Hallucinations occur. The mind, desperate for the processing that dreams provide, begins to dream while awake, a dangerous state that can lead to accidents, poor decisions, and in extreme cases, a complete disconnection from reality. Alara thought of the people in her village who came to her for dream remedies, their exhausted eyes, trembling hands, fragile emotional states. She had always been able to help them with her herbal preparations and gentle guidance. But if this disruption continued to grow, we need to find the source, she said with renewed determination. Show me more of this realm. Perhaps there are additional clues here. Somnus led her across the soft landscape toward what appeared to be a vast cavern mouth, its entrance draped with curtains of flowing blue light. As they walked, Alara noticed more signs of the disruption, patches of darkness clinging to the ground like morning frost, dream waves occasionally stuttering. In their smooth flow, distant sanctuaries dimming momentarily before brightening again. The caves of restoration lay ahead, Somnus explained. This is where dreams work their deepest healing. It's also where we've noticed some of the most troubling effects of the disruption. As they passed through the curtain of light, the temperature around them shifted to perfect comfort, the ideal warmth that makes one sink deeper into peaceful slumber. The cavern beyond was vast, its ceiling lost in gentle darkness while its walls glimmered with embedded crystals that emitted soft, pulsing light and rhythm with what Alara somehow knew were the collective heartbeats of all current dreamers. Throughout the cavern, pools of luminescent liquid collected in natural stone basins. Dreams in this realm no longer took the form of ribbons, but instead had transformed into delicate, translucent creatures that swam through the air and occasionally dipped into the pools, causing ripples of light to spread outward. These are healing dreams in their purest form, Somnus said. They gather strength here before seeking dreamers in need of emotional or physical restoration. Alara watched as one of the dream creatures, resembling something between a jellyfish and a ray with gently undulating fins of light, drifted toward a nearby pool and gracefully submerged itself. The pool brightened momentarily, and when the creature emerged, it glowed with renewed intensity, carrying with it tiny motes of light that hadn't been part of its form before. "What are those particles it collected?" she asked. "Essence of deep rest," Somnus explained. "The foundational element of healing sleep. These pools are fed by underground streams that flow directly from the core of dream consciousness. As they ventured deeper into the cavern system, the number of pools increased, creating a landscape reminiscent of natural hot springs. Many dream creatures moved peacefully among them, but Alara began to notice concerning anomalies. Certain pools had developed a cloudy appearance, their luminescence dimmed. Dream creatures that visited these pools emerged not strengthened but sluggish. Their movements labored. Somnus paused beside one of the affected pools. The liquid within pulsed irregularly, and a film of the now familiar dark mist clung to its surface. "These pools have become contaminated," he said grimly. "The dreams that visit them carry the contamination back to dreamers, who then experience troubled sleep instead of restoration." Alara knelt beside the pool, using her dream lens to examine the contamination more closely. Through the crystal's power, she could see that the dark mist wasn't simply sitting on the surface, but actively mingling with the luminescent liquid, altering its properties. "It's changing the essence of deep rest," she said, troubling realization dawning. "Not just blocking dreams, but transforming the very substance of restorative sleep into something else." "Yes," Somnus confirmed. "But into what and why remains unclear." A sudden disturbance rippled through the cavern. Several dream creatures that had been drifting peacefully suddenly darted away as if frightened. The crystals embedded in the walls flickered, their rhythm momentarily disrupted. "Something approaches," Somnus said, his shadowy form growing taller and more imposing. "Something that does not belong in the realm of deep rest." From deeper in the cavern came a sound unlike anything Alara had heard before, a discordant hum that seemed to vibrate against her very thoughts. Accompanying this unsettling noise was a movement in the air, as if the atmosphere itself was being parted by an invisible force. "Stay behind me," Somnus warned, positioning himself between Alara and whatever was approaching. What emerged from the darkness might once have been a dream, but was now horribly transformed. Where dream creatures were graceful and translucent, this entity was jagged and opaque. Where they flowed with elegant purpose, this thing jerked and twitched, its movements unnatural and disturbing. Its coloration wasn't the soothing blues and silvers of healing dreams, but harsh, clashing tones that hurt the eyes. "A corrupted dream," Somnus said, his voice tense, "twisted from its purpose and filled with something else." The corrupted dream paused, hovering in the space between them. It seemed to be studying them, though it had no discernible eyes. After a moment, it emitted another of those thought-disturbing hums and plunged into a nearby pool. Immediately, the pool's light dimmed, and the liquid within began to cloud. Alara instinctively reached toward her dream lens, which was already glowing in response to the corruption. Before she could focus its power, however, the entity re-emerged from the pool and darted toward another, leaving a trail of darkness in its wake. "It's contaminating the pools deliberately," she gasped. Somnus moved with surprising speed for a being of shadows, positioning himself before the next pool the entity approached. "You shall not pass," he intoned, his voice deepening to something ancient and powerful. The corrupted dream hesitated, then changed direction, moving toward yet another pool. But Somnus gestured, and shadow-like barriers rose around several nearby pools, protecting them from contamination. The entity made a sound like static and backed away, seeming to reassess the situation. Then, with sterling speed, it shot straight toward Alara. She had no time to dodge, but the dream lens flared brilliantly as the corruption approached, creating a shield of light that caused the entity to veer away at the last moment. It circled back, seemingly confused by the resistance, then retreated to the deeper darkness of the cavern. It recognized the dream lens, Somnus said, moving back to Alara's side, and feared it. What was that thing? Alara asked, her heart racing. Once, it was a healing dream meant to ease physical pain, Somnus replied. Now ... It has been weaponized against its own purpose. This confirms our worst fears. The disruption is not just passive interference, but active corruption. Could you destroy it? Somnus's form shifted, momentary uncertainty visible in the swirling shadows. Not without potentially harming the dreamer to whom it was originally connected. Dreams, even corrupted ones, maintain bonds with their intended recipients. Breaking that bond forcefully could cause damage to the dreamer's mind. Alara touched the dream lens, which was still warm from its flare of protective energy. The lens repelled it. Perhaps it can also heal corruption rather than simply fighting against it. Perhaps, Somnus agreed. But to discover how, we must continue your journey. The deeper we go into the dream realms, the closer we may come to understanding the source of this corruption. He gestured toward a passage leading out of the cavern, different from the one they had entered through. The realm of Fantasia lies beyond. The forests of imagination may hold different clues than what we've seen here. Will you come with me? Alara asked. Somnus shook his shadowy head. My essence cannot leave the realm of deep rest, just as Rivera cannot leave the archives. Fantasia will meet you at the boundary. But first, he moved to one of the untainted pools and gestured for Alara to approach. Dip your dream lens into this pool. The essence of deep rest may strengthen its powers for the challenges ahead. Alara removed the pendant from around her neck and carefully lowered it into the luminescent liquid. The crystal seemed to drink in the light, glowing more intensely than before. When she lifted it out, droplets clung to it momentarily before being absorbed, and the pendant felt noticeably heavier against her palm, as if it had gained not just power but substance. Thank you, she said, returning the lens to its place around her neck. Thank you, Dreamkeeper, Somnus replied solemnly. Few from the waking world would undertake this journey. Your courage gives us hope. With renewed determination, Alara followed the passage Somnus had indicated, moving deeper into the dream realms, the strengthened dream lens lighting her way as she left the guardian of deep rest behind. The transition between realms was more gradual this time. The cool blues and purples of Somnus's domain slowly gave way to a riot of colors that seemed to include shades Alara had never seen before. The soft, yielding ground formed into a path that wound through what initially appeared to be mist, but gradually solidified into the most extraordinary forest imaginable. No two trees were alike. Some towered hundreds of feet overhead with trunks wide as houses, while others were delicate as saplings, yet bore massive fruits that glowed from within. Some had bark of what appeared to be polished metal. Others were covered in fur or scales, or feathers. Leaves came in every conceivable shape and color, many changing even as Alara watched. The air was filled with sounds, distant music, whispered conversations, occasional bursts of laughter or exclamations of surprise, all creating a background symphony of creative energy. Scents drifted past, some familiar like cinnamon or sea air, others completely foreign yet oddly compelling. Welcome to my domain, came a voice that seemed to be composed of multiple voices speaking in perfect harmony. Fantasia emerged from between two trees that parted like curtains at her approach. In this realm, her shifting form had stabilized somewhat, maintaining the appearance of an artist with paintbrush fingers, though her features continued to rearrange themselves subtly, now suggesting youth, now wisdom, now playfulness, now intensity. The forests of imagination, she said, gesturing broadly to their surroundings. This is where dreams find their creative elements, their unexpected twists, their vivid details, their endless possibilities. Alara looked around in wonder. It's overwhelming. Fantasia smiled, her expression understanding. To a waking? Mine, yes, it would be. Dreamers experience this realm through the filtering lens of sleep, which allows them to absorb inspiration without being crushed by its intensity. As they began walking along the path, Alara noticed that dreams moved differently here. Rather than ribbons or swimming creatures, they appeared as swirling vortices of color and light, spiraling through the forest and occasionally pausing to draw elements from their surroundings before continuing on their way. What are they collecting? She asked, watching one vortex hover near a tree bearing fruits shaped like perfect geometric solids. Possibilities, Fantasia replied. Ideas, concepts, creative solutions. Watch. The vortex extended a tendril of energy toward one fruit, a dodecahedron that glowed with gentle green light. As the tendril made contact, the fruit opened like a flower, releasing a stream of tiny images that were quickly absorbed into the dream. Alara caught glimpses of what looked like architectural designs, each one slightly different from the last. That dream is helping someone solve a design problem, Fantasia explained. When they wake, they'll find themselves approaching their work from a new angle, with fresh ideas they couldn't access in their conscious state. They continued through the forest, with Fantasia pointing out different types of trees and explaining their functions. Some provided emotional context for creative exploration. Others offered new perspectives on familiar situations. Still others specialized in completely novel experiences beyond anything the dreamer had encountered before. Imagination is essential for human minds, Fantasia said as they paused in a small clearing. Without it, problems remain unsolved, emotions unprocessed, possibilities undiscovered. Alara had been watching carefully as they traveled, and while this realm appeared more vibrant than the previous ones, she could still detect signs of the disruption. Certain trees showed patches of grayness, as if portions of them were being drained of color and substance. Some dream vortices moved with irregular patterns, spinning too fast or too slowly. And in distant parts of the forest, she occasionally caught glimpses of darkness moving between trees. More corrupted dreams, she suspected. Your realm is affected too, she observed. Fantasia nodded, her expression growing serious. All the dream realms are connected. Corruption in one eventually spreads to others. She pointed to a nearby tree whose branches were partially grayed out. These trees should be bursting with creative energy, but something is draining them, leaving dreamers with diminished imaginative resources. As if to confirm her words, a dream vortex approached the affected tree and extended a tendril toward it. Instead of receiving a burst of creative energy, the tendril withdrew quickly, the entire vortex dimming slightly from the contact. That dream will deliver less than it should, Fantasia said sadly. The dreamer may wake feeling that the solution they seek remains just out of reach. Using her dream lens, Alara examined the affected tree more closely. Through the crystal's power, she could see tiny fissures in the tree's essence, through which its creative energy was slowly leaking. The leaked energy didn't dissipate, however. It was being drawn away along nearly invisible filaments that vanished into the depths of the forest. Something is harvesting the creative energy, she said, alarmed by the implication. Not just blocking dreams, but stealing their essence. Fantasia's paintbrush fingers twitched, droplets of color falling to the ground where they blossomed into tiny, short-lived flowers. Yes, we've suspected as much but couldn't confirm it. Your dream lens reveals what is hidden to us. We should follow these filaments, Alara suggested. They might lead us to the source of the corruption. A dangerous path, Fantasia warned. The filaments lead to the deepest, wildest parts of the imagination forest, where even I tread carefully. Dreams in their raw creative state can be unpredictable, even overwhelming. Nevertheless, we need to learn more, Alara insisted. The disruption seems to be growing worse in each realm I visit. If something is actively harvesting dream essence, we need to know why and how to stop it. Fantasia considered this her form shifting through several variations before settling again. You're right, of course, but we'll need to prepare you. She led Alara to a tree unlike any they had passed before. Its trunk was smooth and reflective like polished silver, its branches bearing not leaves but tiny mirrors that caught and redirected light in dazzling patterns. This is a perspective tree, Fantasia explained. Its essence helps dreamers see situations from multiple angles simultaneously. For what we're about to encounter, such flexibility of perception may prove vital. She touched one of her paintbrush fingers to the trunk, leaving a swirl of rainbow colors that sank into the reflective surface. In response, one of the largest mirrors detached from its branch and floated down to hover before Alara. Look into it, Fantasia instructed. Alara did as she was asked. Initially, she saw only her own reflection, but it quickly multiplied into dozens of versions of herself, each slightly different, some older, some younger, some dressed differently, some carrying different expressions. All were her, yet each represented a different possibility, a different perspective. Now touch your dream lens to the mirror, Fantasia said Dot when Alara pressed the crystal pendant against the floating mirror. A flash of light momentarily blinded her. When her vision cleared, the mirror had vanished, but the dream lens had changed. The crystal now contained swirling depths that shifted like liquid, occasionally reflecting tiny versions of the multiple selves she had seen in the mirror. Your lens can now reveal hidden perspectives, Fantasia explained. In the depths of the imagination forest, appearances can be deceiving. This enhancement will help you discern deeper truths. Thus prepared, they set off, following the nearly invisible filaments that drew creative energy from the affected trees. The path took them away from the more orderly sections of the forest into increasingly wild territories. Here, the trees grew in impossible configurations, some upside down with roots reaching for the sky, others growing in spiral patterns that hurt the eyes to follow, still others appearing and disappearing like mirages. The dreams they encountered changed as well. Instead of the orderly vortices they had seen earlier, these were barely formed things, pulsing with raw creative potential, their shapes constantly shifting as if they couldn't decide what to become. These are proto-dreams, Fantasia explained, her voice hushed. Dreams in their earliest imaginative state, before they've been structured by purpose or destination. Their pure creative potential. Alara noticed that the filaments they were following grew thicker and more numerous as they progressed, joining together to form channels that pulsed with harvested energy. These channels all seemed to be flowing in the same direction, toward what appeared to be a massive disturbance in the fabric of the forest ahead. Dot as they drew closer. The disturbance resolved into what Alara could only describe as a tear, a jagged vertical opening hanging in the air between trees. Unlike the natural boundaries between dream realms, which involved gradual transitions, this appeared to be a forced puncture between spaces that were never meant to connect directly. Filaments they had been following converged on this tier, pouring their stolen creative energy into it. Through her enhanced dream lens, Alara could see that the energy wasn't passing through to whatever lay beyond, but rather was being used to maintain and gradually widen the tier itself. This shouldn't exist, Fantasia said, her multiple voices dropping to a horrified whisper. It's a forced connection, an unnatural pathway between realms. Between which realms? Alara asked, studying the tear carefully through her lens. That's what troubles me. One side is clearly my domain. See how the edges shimmer with creative energy. But the other side... Fantasia shook her head, paint droplets falling in distressed patterns. It doesn't match any of the dream realms. I fear it may connect to somewhere outside the proper flow of dreams entirely. Before Alara could respond, movement at the edges of the tier caught her attention. Something was emerging, not entering. The imagination forest from the other side, but forming directly within the tier itself, constructed from the stolen creative energy being fed into it. What took shape was both beautiful and terrible. It resembled one of the dream vortices they had seen earlier, but larger and more complex, with layers of swirling energy and arrangements that somehow felt wrong, as if fundamental rules were being broken in its very construction. It pulsed with power stolen from countless dreams, and as it completed its formation, it extruded tendrils in all directions, each one seeking more sources to drain. A dream harvester? Fantasia gasped. Artificially created to collect and redirect dream essence. The entity paused, as if becoming aware of their presence. Although it had no discernible sensory organs, Alara felt a sudden impression of being examined, assessed, categorized. The harvester extended a tendril in their direction, moving with deliberate purpose. It's aware of us, she warned. Fantasia moved in front of Alara, her paintbrush fingers extended defensively. It won't be the first time I've protected my realm from intrusion, she said, her voice taking on a steely quality Alara hadn't heard before Dot as the tendril approached. Fantasia swept her hands in complex patterns, leaving trails of vivid color in the air that solidified into a barrier between them and the harvester. The creative energy was so intense that Alara had to squint against its brightness. The harvester's tendril made contact with the barrier, and for a moment it seemed Fantasia's defense would hold. But then the tendril began to absorb the very colors that formed the barrier, draining them like it had drained the trees. The vibrant shield faded rapidly under this assault. It's feeding on my power, Fantasia said, alarm evident in her voice. Creative energy only makes it stronger. The dream lens pulsed against Alara's chest, drawing her attention. Looking through it at the harvester, she saw something unexpected. At the entity's core was a small dark object, something solid and mechanical within the swirling energy. The lens revealed it as the true source of the harvester's unnatural behavior. Acting on instinct, Alara focused her intention through the lens, directing its power not at the impressive outer layers of the harvester, but at that mechanical core. A beam of silver light shot from the crystal, piercing through the swirling energies and striking the dark object at the center. The harvester recoiled, its tendril withdrawing rapidly. The entire entity pulsed erratically, its carefully structured layers briefly falling into chaos before realigning. It retreated toward the tier, seemingly intent on escape. Don't let it return through the tier, Fantasia cried. If it reports what it's discovered, they'll only create more. Alara focused her lens again, attempting to cut off the harvester's retreat, but the entity was too quick. It slipped through the tier, which pulsed wider for a moment to accommodate its passage, then contracted slightly in its absence. Who is they? Alara asked, turning to Fantasia. Who's creating these harvesters? Fantasia's form flickered with uncertainty. We don't know for certain, but we suspect someone has found a way to tap into the dream realms from outside. Someone who understands enough about dreams to exploit them, but cares nothing for the damage they're causing. Alara approached the tier cautiously, studying it through her lens. Now that the harvester had departed, she could see more clearly into the space beyond. It wasn't another dream realm as she had initially thought, but rather a constructed space. Artificial, geometric, utterly lacking the organic flow of natural dreams. This tier needs to be sealed, she said. As long as it remains open, more harvesters can come through. Agreed, but I lack the power to close it, Fantasia admitted. It draws on creative energy to sustain itself, energy I cannot counteract without feeding it further. Alara thought for a moment, then had an insight. What about the opposite of creative energy? Would that work against it? The opposite? Fantasia echoed, then understanding dawned across her ever-changing features. Of course, structured. Thought, logical patterns, ordered sequences. The realm of Lucida specializes in such energies. Then that's where I need to go next, Alara decided. Fantasia nodded. Lucida's domain, the vivid plateaus, lies beyond the eastern edges of my forest. She can help you understand more about these tiers and perhaps how to seal them. She paused, looking troubled. But I must warn you, if harvesting is occurring in multiple dream realms, you may encounter more resistance as you get closer to the source. I understand the risk, Alara said, but dreams are worth protecting. In my village, I've seen what healing dreams can do, how they can transform lives. I can't stand by while that power is corrupted. Your determination honors us, Dreamkeeper, Fantasia said warmly. She gestured, and one of her paintbrush fingers transformed into a more conventional hand, which she placed on Alara's shoulder. Before you go, one final gift from the realm of imagination. She touched her other hand to Alara's forehead, leaving a small mark that tingled briefly, then faded from sight. The mark of creative insight, she explained. It won't make you invulnerable, but it will help you think beyond conventional solutions when faced with unfamiliar challenges. Alara thanked her sincerely. Then, with a final look at the troubling tier hanging in the forest air, she set off toward the eastern boundary of the realm, where Lucida would be waiting to guide her through the next stage of her journey. As she walked, the wild, chaotic energy of the deep forest gradually gave way to more organized patterns. Trees began to arrange themselves in recognizable formations, and the path beneath her feet straightened, its edges becoming more clearly defined. The very air seemed to clarify, shifting from the heady, almost intoxicating atmosphere of pure imagination to something cleaner and sharper. Ahead, the forest ended abruptly at what appeared to be a vast cliff edge. As Alara approached this boundary, she could see beyond it a landscape utterly different from Fantasia's organic wilderness. Geometric plateaus rose in perfect arrangements, their surfaces gleaming with crystalline clarity. Light moved across this landscape in precisely calculated rays, creating patterns that seemed to contain mathematical meaning. Standing at the boundary, waiting with perfect stillness, was Lucida. In this transitional space, her form had stabilized into that of a tall, slender figure composed of what appeared to be living crystal. Her eyes still changed color constantly, but now the shifts occurred in an ordered sequence spanning the entire spectrum. You've crossed through 3 realms now, Dreamkeeper, Lucida said by way of greeting, her voice clear as a perfectly struck bell. What have you learned?